It's time. It's time for Wednesday. And I saw Matthew Bush and Sean Smith were saying, I can't think of any good questions. All questions are good questions. Today we're talking particularly about heaven and hell and the reality of those. Swedenborg's most popular book was called Heaven and Hell. There's a couple of cool questions to start off with from John Bishop and April E. Get your questions in if you want me to. Well, just see how I do on these first couple ones, then you'll know if you want me to get the next ones. John Bishop says, does Swedenborg explain the reason why some people have a shared death experience when a loved one passes into the spirit world, hitching a ride with a dead person's journey beyond the veil? I think Raymond Moody did the first book about shared death experiences, did he? Because he was the guy who pioneered near-death experiences. And it seems to be just like near-death experiences are common. This thing happens where when you're with somebody who's dying, you can sometimes have a spiritual experience that's linked to that. It doesn't always happen, but it can. And it happens, I guess, to a lot of people. Swedenborg does not comment on that in particular, but allow me to speculate, because all of us are intimately connected to the spiritual world. And when we die, our spiritual senses activate. So the eyes and ears and nose and mouth of your spirit, you can perceive what's coming through them instead of your physical ones. So that's how you can see the spiritual world when you're dying. But all of us have those things all the time. They're just shut. So your spirit, so thought brings presence, love brings union. You're probably thinking pretty intently about this person who's dying. So that would mean not just your bodies, but your spirits are pretty close. And I would imagine when these shared death experiences, it's someone that you love a lot. So there's a union there. Could be that their spirit can actually pull you a little bit, stretch you to a certain point. That's my speculation. April E. Hi, April. Compared to earthly life, would hell be an upgrade or a downgrade? I know that you even have to ask. Earthly life can be quite a lot. So hell is the joy that you feel from harming other people. Heaven is the joy you feel in helping other people. Those are the fundamental ingredients of it. When the pleasure of evil is felt as good, that is hell. Feeling the joy, these are direct quotes. Feeling the joy, I know it's so impressive that I have a couple of quotes by some obscure Christian mystic memorized. It was why I was cool in high school. I wasn't cool. Feeling the joy of someone else as joy within oneself, that is loving, and which is the same thing as heaven. So that's the core of hell. So hell is the state you get in when what you enjoy is to harm other people. So for people who make their life a life that is centered around the enjoyment of things that are fundamentally destructive to other people, hell is the happiest you can be in that kind of life. I don't think it's an upgrade from earthly life, because while people in hell get to as much as they can without transgressing certain boundaries, which I think God through the angels sets, where they're not allowed to hurt people to a certain extent, or they can't do anything that will make them become worse or more hellish. As long as you can stay within set limits, you get to experience your joy. There's an example that we made a video about where there's a room full of people in hell who were obsessed with wealth and having more wealth than others and stealing it from others, and that was the joy of their life, was wealth for wealth's sake. And they're sitting at these tables and they have these little bits of gold that they sort of fantasize and can hallucinate, because of the nature of the spiritual world, into really looking like there's a bunch of gold in front of them. And this brings them great joy because they're in the pleasure of their, look at how much wealth I have. And Swedenborg asks one of them, whose gold is all this gold on these tables? And the person he's talking to says, it's mine. And Swedenborg says, but isn't it theirs as well? Because you both are looking at it. And the other person says, well, it's also mine. And they describe these rules where they can say, they're allowed to say that all the gold is theirs, but they can't say that it's not someone else's. So there's a workaround where they can get this feeling of their greed, but they're not allowed to actually steal from people. And in hell, you often can't help. I mean, you're pushed by that desire, so you break rules. There are consequences. It's not like a happy existence, but it's not torture. And I think that life in hell is not an upgrade for not for anyone, because if you love what's good and true, if you're trying to love goodness and truth, the life of hell is not nearly as good as even an earthly life with hardship in it when you get pleasure from goodness and truth. And if you love what's evil and false, hell is more restrictive than earth. Like on earth, you can go and harm innocent people and get away with things in a way that you can't in hell. That's what I would think. All right. Let's see what's... Hey, Jenny, I'm glad you could show up for Wednesday. Thanks to the snow for doing that. Sean Smith says, what is real? Isn't reality just the perceptions of the mind? If we're talking about are heaven and hell real? Well, as I was saying, heaven and hell come out of the mind. Spiritual things, your spirit, the part of you that's the mind, is spiritual. And the spiritual world is based around spiritual things rather than physical things. Like physical world is based around physical laws, like gravity and electromagnetic stuff. The spiritual world, the fundamental forces that shape it are the spiritual things. So that would be things of the mind. So what you care about and what you believe are the two primary things that can actually shape the literal world around you. The hell appears like you would think hell would. It's got run down, burnt out buildings in it. There are terrifying creatures there. The people look demonic. The weather's not great. All those external appearances are based on they're a reflection of the evil and falsity that people are treasuring and holding on to in their hearts. People in hell don't necessarily see it like that because they love what's evil and false. So to them, they might look just fine to each other, and hell looks like a fine place. But if you see it for what it really is, it looks like that. So in that way, it's the mind, right? The mind, but our mind is not generating things. Our mind is observing things. So even the evils and falsities, the goodness and truth, the thoughts and the feelings, those are us observing spiritual realities that are making the mind what it is. So ultimately, the thing that's actually real is the divine. Only God is intrinsic reality. And so everything that we have is looking at, reflecting, or twisting what's coming out of God. So I'd say objectively, God is real, and everything else derives its reality from that. April E., if that's true, then I wonder why we would not have a choice to simply not exist rather than an eternity of hell. That's a good point. I don't think that, it doesn't seem to me like when you're in hell, you want to get out of hell. When Swedenborg talked to, I bring this up a lot because I think it's a great example of the difference between the hell he describes and the hell that's traditionally described in Christianity as a long punishment, an eternal punishment. So he talks to these spirits at the end of, I don't have the book right here, believe it or not, at the end of Divine Providence. Are you sure I don't have Divine Providence around here somewhere? I mean, just 1 second. Bad form leaving my thing like that. I can just look it up here. I really want to grab the book. I want to read this to you because this is important, I think. This gets at what the reality of heaven and hell are. Let's see. You have it?
Yeah, super old one.
Super old Divine Providence? Okay. Thanks, man. That's Jesse, everybody. Okay, so... Okay, here, we'll get this glorious old language. At the very end of Divine Providence, he says, after these three little stars, excuse the addition of what follows to fill out the rest of the sheet. Because paper was expensive. You didn't want to print blank space in those days. So maybe it's a little tongue-in-cheek there. Certain spirits, by permission, ascended from hell, and said to me, you have written many things from the Lord. Write something from us, too. So Swedenborg is given one side of the story. They want to give theirs. So this is, what is it like for people in hell? Are they going to beg for forgiveness? Are they going to say, we wish we didn't exist? I replied, what shall I write? They said, write that every spirit, whether good or evil, is in his own delight. A good spirit in the delight of his good, and an evil spirit in the delight of his evil. I asked, this is Swedenborg, what is your delight? They said, it is a delight in committing adultery, stealing, cheating, and lying. And I asked, what sort of delights are these? And they said, to the senses of others, they are like the fetid smell from excrement, the putrid smell from dead bodies, and the odor from stagnant urine. Whoa, what was that? Well, like I was saying, hell, everything in hell, like everything in heaven, is a reflection of what's inside them. So those joys that they had, they delight in committing adultery, stealing, cheating, and lying, doing those things that hurt people. Those express themselves spiritually in all these kinds of terrible smells and things, because that's how gross that stuff is when you can really perceive it. But that's only if you understand that stuff is harmful. Because they're saying to the other people, that's how they perceive them. To angels, to good spirits, that's how you perceive them. And I said, and are these things, after they've just described how gross that stuff is, and are these things delightful to you? They answered, most delightful. I said, then you are like the unclean beasts that live in such things, like maggots. They replied, if we are, but such things are delicious to our nostrils. I asked, what more shall I write from you? They said, write this. Swedenborg has given them a platform. Look, I'm not going to censor you. What do you want to say? They said, write this, that everyone is permitted to be in his own delight, even that which is most unclean, as they call it, provided he does not infest good spirits and angels. But as we could not do otherwise than infest them, we were driven away and cast into hell, where we suffer dreadful things. I said, why did you infest the good? They replied that they could not do otherwise, that a sort of fury came upon them when they saw any angel and felt the divine sphere around him. Then I said, thus you are even like wild beasts. When they heard this, a fury came upon them that appeared like the fire of hatred, and to prevent their doing harm, they were drawn back into hell. I know I'm spending a long time on this, but, so the people there are saying, look, we enjoy this stuff. We enjoy cheating people, stealing people, hurting people's relationships. We love that. It feels good. And other people who aren't into that stuff say that that's disgusting. We don't care. We like it. But because we make our life in that kind of stuff, we can't help but attack people, because all that stuff has hatred at its core. And so when we attack people, we get punished for it. But even with all the punishment and everything, they're still saying, this is a life that I love and I chose. It's hugely heavy. Like, I can't believe that we can get into that place. I'm not saying, so it's just no big deal, but that's addressing, I think, this issue of everybody gets to go do with their life what they want to do with it. Just certain things that are bad come with this baggage. Emily Smith says, why do some people see ghosts? It has to do with the spiritual eyes being opened. This is something that happens. It's what happened to Swedenborg. He says, we all, as I was saying just at the beginning of the show, we all have spiritual features. Your spirit has the same organs that your body does, but they're spiritual in nature. So the spiritual world's all around you. The spirits of people who have died, and you are in it at the same time that you're in the physical world. And when your spiritual eyes are opened, and how that happens, I don't know the exact mechanism. the Lord just opened Swedenborg's spiritual eyes, he says. There's a lot of people who have theories on how you do it or techniques, but I don't have any in particular. But once those are opened, then even momentarily, like we said in the shared death experience earlier, that's when you could see a ghost, if you're talking about it as a ghost, like somebody who's died. Angela B says, hi Curtis, question, what makes you believe in everything Swedenborg? Is it faith? How do you know it's really true? Yeah, how am I where do I get confidence in all this stuff? I don't know if I even believe everything Swedenborg. I really believe a lot of it. There's some things that I think it's probably not really like that, but it's not really major things usually. And I don't know, some things I'm pretty sure are true. Other stuff I just think is true because of the other things that he wrote that I am very close to certain are true. So I trust him as a source. Mainly the stuff that I'm most convicted about is the stuff that I can experience most directly, and that has to do with the nature of what good and evil are, the nature of how your mind works, the nature of the influence of the spiritual world on your mind. That stuff you can observe, or I've felt like I've been able to observe that in my own thought patterns. There's a bunch of the other material in his work that it seems elegant and gorgeous, and it just feels like it's true. Like, that makes total sense. Oh, that makes sense. And I think that's something that people who come to this channel, they say, oh yeah, that does make sense. So that confirms something. Other things that he says, I don't have a lot of direct connection to, but because he's proven himself so much to me, I'm like, okay, well, cool. So I guess it's faith. It's a combination, but I would say that the effectiveness, the effect that his writings have, and then the elegance of it keeps me hooked, and how it feels when I read it. Hi, Eric. Thanks, John. Oops. Okay, great. Where are we going? Thanks, Sean. Give me 1 second here. I always notice in the I've seen some of the replays, and whenever I'm trying to read the comments, it looks like I'm disturbed. I'm like, what are that? It's just hard to see. I really enjoy reading all the comments. Okay, so Janny Robert says, why do you think some people get to experience an NDE? They always come back so beautifully changed for the better. This world would be so kind if we all got one. Yeah, I wouldn't mind one. I would really love one. Well, because then if somebody asked me, how do you know all this Swedenborg stuff is true? I could say, well, because I saw it. Wouldn't that be a much more solid platform? But I think the reason that we don't is our psychological state, which I'll say our spiritual state, is a very complicated thing. And what would be good for us is very complicated. Because the point of life on earth is that we become regenerated, and we go from the natural tendency to favor ourselves over others and favor superficial things over deep things. We have to have that replaced slowly over the course of our life by a love for good things. And that can only be done through the experiences that we have and our chances to choose what's good and true and act on them as if it's our own. And miracles compel. Miracles compel you to believe. In this book, Divine Providence, he talks about it really clearly. The reason why God doesn't just appear and tell everyone, I am real, this is what you have to do, go do it, is because you cannot make anything your own. Nothing becomes a part of your spirit unless it's embraced in a state of freedom. So if you have God saying, I'm real and this is what's right, go do it, in a way that you can't deny, God can say it in all kinds of ways that you have still the freedom to say, well, I don't think that's really God. I don't think there's really God. But if he says it in a way that you can't deny, it actually fries your ability to really connect with the concept that was said. Because the way that human beings can take something into their heart and mind is to weigh it. And is it true? Is it not? Test it out. Just what I was describing about Swedenborg. That if right now I was like, oh, I got to pause the stream. God is in this room and he's telling me, yes, everything in Swedenborg is true. I wouldn't be able to actually form a living relationship with the concepts in there because it's forced. There's no freedom, and I don't have the ability to turn things over and find them for myself. So it could be that state I'm describing of my relationship to Swedenborg's writings is the right matrix in which these ideas can actually take root. So people who had a near-death experience must have been in a place where that near-death experience wouldn't damage their ability, their freedom. Like they have for some super complex reason, they can have that experience. Maybe they were already confirmed in those things, or maybe they still, the way they hold things in their mind, they could still die. I don't know. It's probably something that you could have multiple PhDs in if we knew how to study that kind of thing. But for some reason, that's going to be okay for them, and it's going to be useful in their development. It could be that if I had a spiritual experience, it would not be useful in my regeneration. It would actually hinder me. But I'm not saying I wouldn't want one. Okay. So, Secret Luck 60. Did I do a good job on April's question? Bojian, sorry. We should do a compilation of those Swedenborg stories. I think the Swedenborg Foundation has one that's called Debates with Devils and Conversations with Angels. If you look on Swedenborg.com, Debates with Devils, I think it's all of Swedenborg's stories. Sacred Lux 60. Curtis, did we have a choice to be born in this earthly existence? I don't think so. There's plenty of people who think we did, I was just talking to somebody who thinks we plan our life here. Again, I didn't get this directly, but Swedenborg doesn't ever mention us having choice in it. I would think that that's not a call that we could make. I mean, divine providence is the only perspective. That's God's perspective. Has the only perspective that would know what's for the best. Is it better for us to be born on earth or not? Like in the long run, will we? Because I feel like there's been many times when I felt like I didn't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this. I didn't sign up for this. I'm indignant about it. But I don't really know whether 300 years from now, when I'm in the afterlife, whether I'll be really glad that I'm here. So I don't know. There's no direct commentary on pre-life existence from Swedenborg. I kind of take the absence of that to mean he didn't believe that we have anything. But ultimately, it would kind of, like, with Swedenborg, we are not the ultimate decision maker. I mean, we are, but not for complex decisions like that. We make the fundamental decision, which is, what do we want to love? Do we want to love what's good? It primarily comes down to, do we want to love what's good or love what's evil? That we make that choice, and God can't stop us from making that choice. But I think, as far as the particulars of how it plays out, do we? I don't think so. And in Swedenborg, saying that the way that the whole divine design works, you have to be born here, because that's how a being can be formed. There's actually, the physical layer has to envelop the spiritual layer, even if just for a little while, for the machine to run. I don't know. Matthew Bush, question, Curtis, did you go to a Swedenborg school? How was going to school like for someone raised in Swedenborg? I have gone to some Swedenborgian schools. In fact, I went I grew up in a Swedenborg-based church, and that church had some of its own private schools. And so I split my time about 50-50, where I was going to Swedenborgian schools for some of that, and then going to non-Swedenborgian schools for some of that. I think, does anyone want the breakdown? No? Okay. I think I went to kindergarten outside of Swedenborgian schools, first through sixth grade in Swedenborgian schools, 7th and 8th grade, 9th and 10th grade out of Swedenborgian schools, 11th and 12th in, first 2 years of college in, last 3 years of college out. I think that the only time it really made a difference was in my last 3 years of college, when I transferred to just a regular non-Swedenborgian, it was like a 20,000 student college. And that was the time when I was starting to get really into Swedenborg. Like, I was really starting to like it for myself, not just because people told me to like it. And that was when I really started to feel this sense of excitement and joy in the Swedenborgian worldview, and it's comparing it and contrasting it to the worldview that I was learning in college. I could see as you start to get into different life philosophies and the way people look at things, I was really starting to feel great about Swedenborg. I felt like there's so much clarity in the way Swedenborg sees the world, and it's better than a lot of the stuff I was learning was augmenting it, but a lot of the other stuff I was like, what Swedenborg says is way better than that. Tristan, happy birthday tomorrow. Thank you for spending your birthday eve here with us on Wednesday. Julianne says, is heaven real? Yes. And that's both, Swedenborg talks about it, traveling there extensively. There's a million NDEs that talk about it, but also it's a state of mind. It's based on a state of mind, like I was saying before, that we can experience now. So the joy you have in knowing that you did something good for someone, the happiness you feel in knowing you've made someone happy or that someone is happy, that is the essence of heaven. There's innocence in it. There's wisdom and innocence, the wisdom of innocence in it. There's all kinds of other joys gathered up into it. But fundamentally, it's something that you're feeling whenever you feel happiness for a good or wholesome reason. That's, you're feeling heaven with you right then. Your good thoughts and feelings are coming to you out of heaven. So it's something we experience all the time. Hi, Maui Spence. Thanks for watching from Hawaii. Sacred Lux 60 said, if not, then how do we have freedom of choice? And I think you're talking about if we didn't get to choose to be here or not, how do we have freedom of choice? Yeah, the freedom of choice is not total freedom. I think I've talked about this on Wednesday before, but like I don't have the freedom to move this book with my mind. Like, I may want to move this book with my mind, but I don't have that freedom. I can move it, but that's just because I happen to have my arms working. If they weren't working, I couldn't. Like, we are not in a free existence where it's up to us to choose most of the things. And there's so many things that I'm not free to do right now. I think that the freedom and whether or not we existed doesn't seem like there's a freedom there. The freedom, though, that we do have, and that is always preserved, is a freedom to choose what we love by what we engage with. Choose which joys. There's all these joys available in life, and we choose which joys or pleasures we pursue. And in that, we have the freedom to the joys and the pleasures that you pursue come to compose your spirit. They make you who you are. So in that way, we really can choose our life, and that we choose what our life is based around. And spiritually speaking, that absolutely makes us who we are. In the afterlife, you look a certain way based on what it is that you love. The feelings you get are based on that. The community you're in, where you live. It's all the other things stem from this fundamental choice that we get to make, which is both positive and harmful things. And it's not like you can't always tell which is which, but fundamentally, positive and harmful things both offer an enjoyment. And which one are we going to choose? I think that's where the freedom shows up. Hi, Crash Organism. Thank you for sharing their story there. The Cube says, oh yeah, thanks, Crash. That seems like a intense experience that you had. The Cube, evil seems to have power during Earth life, but it definitely does not have power in the afterlife. But since it does seem to have power during Earth life, why is that why evil seems attractive to some? Yeah, it has to do with what's power. Power is getting what you want. I recently made this video that says that evil doesn't have any power. Evil can do evil. So if people who are acting on the enjoyment of harming others can do all kinds of things and have huge disruptions to life and cause a ton of pain, which is what they want to cause, seems like power. The reason why you could say evil doesn't have any power is that ultimately everything you're trying to do through evil will not happen. You'll get the opposite of what you're trying. So for example, if you hate someone and so because you hate them, there's a joy in hurting them. If you hurt them, ultimately, yeah, they might suffer, but God will use that suffering, eventually to turn them more and more towards good. And your act of attacking them, which you thought was to try to make you happy because you enjoy doing it, and then also you get ahead of your enemy, that destroys your spirit. I mean, it harms your spirit, and it harms your long-term happiness. So ultimately, what you were trying to put them down and put yourself up, and what happens ultimately is you've made yourself more miserable long-term and them happier long-term. That's the kind of no power that evil has. The whole thing is a scam. The whole evil thing is a scam. People are getting scammed into thinking evil's the way to go. Nicholas says, question, can someone be cursed to hell before death? Could God's grace be denied for any reason on this plane of existence? No. You can always reform. That's why this world is so essential. It's essential we have this world, because the nature of having the physical world where you have an outer and an inner nature where you can be full of compulsions to evil and terrible things in your inner nature, but because you can kind of act a different way than you are, and you can sort of have this two-faced nature to you, actually God can use that so that your outer self can learn the truth and learn good things, and you can actually use that to look at your inner stuff and turn around and reject those things, first for more selfish reasons and later for more and more altruistic reasons. You can always, that this world has, the value of this world is the ability for us to be reformed in it. You're welcome, Sacred Lux. I am doing well, Cube, thank you. Yep, I'm doing good. Okay. Bailey and BB, yeah. I'll see you soon. If anyone's in Florida, I'm gonna be there on Sunday. It's gonna be fun. Okay, all right. So okay, Cube's also, why do we have to put up with evil spirits during our whole earthly life? I know, right? And even if you're watching and you're like, what are you talking about? I don't have any evil spirits. Swedenborg says that all the negativity in your mind and in your heart, like all the negative self-talk that you get, all the destructive thoughts towards others, all the unnecessary anxiety and fear and everything, that's coming from hell. That's hell trying to harm you. And so in that case, it's exhausting. Jesus Christ, when he was on the earth, was constantly having to battle with hell. Well, when Jesus battles with hell, he's not trying to hurt hell, because hell is full of people who he still loves and will always love and will always try to make the happiest life for them, even if they've chosen hell, which is the desire to harm, the joy you get out of the desire to harm others. But his whole life, Swedenborg says, he was constantly having to fight these battles. So we are being regenerated throughout our whole life and being perfected in love and wisdom. And this is what I was just saying. When you're in a state of hell, and if you're a spirit that's in a state of hell, it's just a person who's devoted their life to what's evil and comes to love it in the afterlife, and they act without restraint to try to harm people. They're trying to harm us. It doesn't always mean they know we're around, but their presence messes with the supply mechanism for consciousness. Overall, hell is what's causing all the misery that happens inside and outside of us. And they're trying to harm us, but God is using that to make us into better people, because it's through these trials and tribulations that we come to reject evil and grow compassion and things instead, because we know what it's like to suffer. So those evil spirits, evil intentions, are ultimately backfiring. Evil always backfires in the long term, and the insanity of evil is twofold. One is it's not understanding that backfire, and the second is it's absolutely insane to enjoy things that are horrible to do and that you would not want done to you. It's total insanity. April E. If heaven has no concept of time, how do they schedule events or hours of operation for their government, businesses, etc.? That's a good question. I don't know if I totally know the answer. I would say that heaven has no concept of a fixed time. So, yeah. So there's like things happen in sequence, which I think you're already alluding to. But how do they schedule events? There's got to be some mechanism. Swedenborg talks about societies that have schedules, and there's something that happens in the morning every day. And there's people work to a certain extent, a certain part of the day, and then they have the afternoon off. So I don't know how you do it. There's just some way. There must be that you can somehow measure states. I think that the difference is, like, let's say you have a morning of work, and that state would encompass the spiritual equivalent of time that would allow you to do what you need to do then, and do as much as you can do then. So it wouldn't be that you're looking at your watch saying, oh, I'm already tired of working, I don't have energy, and there's 2 hours left here. It wouldn't be like that. And it wouldn't be, oh, I don't have time to get this thing done, I really want to keep working on it, but now it's over. I think that states would complete themselves, but so it's sort of like when everybody comes to the end of their state, then they're all on to the next thing. But those things, the experience is simultaneous for people, even if some experiences are longer. That's just me guessing at it. Okay. We're rolling. All right. Okay. Where were we? Come on now. People are doing stuff. All right. I may skip over some things. Sorry about that. It just suddenly punks me all the way to the bottom. And we only got a few minutes left anyway. So if I missed you here, I'm sorry. I'm not dodging your question. I don't think I see any questions that I actually try to dodge. But you can write them in the chat afterwards, and we'll get to them for sure. So let's see. S. Amethyst says, is hell irredeemable? I mean, a place that people cannot work their way out of. Is there condemnation in that way at all? I believe in some form of judgment, not condemnation. Yeah, right. This is like such a confusing answer. And when people are talking about, do you know all Swedenborg is true? I wonder if there's something in here that he didn't get right or something. So he sort of says that hell is forever. Well, what he says is your nature after death can't be changed to eternity. then again, I don't know if that means you're in hell forever if your nature is hellish, because, for example, the people of the earliest church had corrupted their nature, but there was this whole new system God devised of having a separated mind and heart so that you could learn things from. There's all these workarounds. He also talks about people in hell who everything that goes on in hell, all the negativity and punishment is to free them from particular evils, to free them from the desire for that evil. So it all seems to be going somewhere. And I don't think God is ever going to be content to have people not end up in heaven. That's the point of existence. So I feel like there's probably a puzzle piece or two missing there. I resonate with you. Glad that this has been a good talk for you. Okay. Karen says, a little off topic. No problem. But I've been shocked lately. Some people in my family were not religious at all, are now preaching to me and saying we are in the end times. Do you think this is true? Nope. Because the end times that Christians are talking about is based on the book of Revelation, I believe. And Swedenborg is very clear that the book of Revelation is not about the physical world. It's a spiritual document, so it's about what happens inside each one of us. That there's a sort of a end times for each of us when we die. And it's also talking about events that happen in the spiritual world, because spiritual world events are what affect the consciousness of everyone going forward. So he wrote a book called Last Judgment, which you can download for free on Swedenborg.com. And in that he says that all the prophecies and things in Revelation are about spiritual events, which have already happened. This was about a big shakeup in the spiritual world, that the effect of that was to free up people's consciousness. And so that could be why we haven't grown so fast and know so many more things now, and technology has exploded and everything. And also there's so much more religious freedom than there is now. People get worried about the world ending. God's not going to end the world. As I said before, the world is this essential place. And planet Earth, but also the physical universe is such an essential place for reformation and regeneration. I'm not going to end that. And God is not going to come down and destroy everyone. People have been saying, there's a website you can go to that says that almost every year since the book of Revelation has come out, there's been people predicting that these are the end times. These are the end times. People always say, I remember 10 years ago, there was this big billboard on I-95 by where I live, the big highway. And it was saying that October 21st, it was like 2016 or something, is going to be the end times. There was this big thing, and it wasn't. I think it's hell trying to make people afraid that there's going to be this terrible event where a bunch of stuff's going to happen. Or sometimes people are into it because they think, well, I'm going to be one of the chosen ones and everyone else is going to burn. But it could well be that your family is genuinely concerned about it and they think it's really going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think there's any indication. I think the idea of end times is something that's sprung up in Christianity because of mistaken understanding of what the Bible is and how it works. Buck Williams, this is a way off question. That's all right, but I'm trying to find the spiritual meaning behind Ezekiel 25. Man, I don't have that off the top of my head. We are looking at doing some shows on Ezekiel. We're working, I think, on Ezekiel 17 right now. But 25, I'm sorry, I don't have it. If you leave that in a question afterwards, though, we'll probably get to it. Ryan Renkin said the same thing. In every age, every year, there's always a way to point to it being the end time. Thanks, Angie, for sharing that memory of your daughter. Okay, I gotta go. I never want to be done these things, but Karen was saying it's hard to believe in reincarnation. I know some people have memories of another life. According to Swedenborg, the memories people experience that people think are past lives are the memories of the spirits around them, that you can kind of tap into those, or there can be like a leak. I'm not saying it couldn't be possible, but he seemed to think that you move in one direction. We did a whole show called "Is Reincarnation? Do we reincarnate? Do we reincarnate?" And it talks about how there's elements of reincarnation that Swedenborg says do happen. There's elements he says don't happen. It's pretty interesting. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. I'll see you next week. Okay. I think that's it. Thanks, everyone, for coming here and talking about heaven and hell and all those related things. Hope you have a great day.